Okay, and we're live. Good evening, classmates. Welcome back to Earth School Journey, where experience is our teacher and every season brings a new lesson. Okay, we're trying something new. I don't know how that worked. Y'all can tell us.
It was fine. It was fine.
So, welcome back, classmates. We are here again and we are in our second week of the month. So this is where we kind of start really talking about our topic, which this month is stillness. Be still and know that I am God. That is Psalm 46, verse 10. And the question we have for you to kick off this episode is, what if the pause is part of the lesson? What if that pause is part of the lesson? um we kind of we live in this world that's always moving, right? It's always got to be going. We have to be, if you're sitting still, you're falling behind, information with technology, it just moves so fast. You often feel like you just can't keep up. At least I do. I often feel like I can't keep up with all of this like information that we need to have, let's not even get started on the social media, but it's this constant noise, this constant movement. So, what if this pause really is part of the lesson? I don't know. We're going to talk about it today. So, Uni, my dear, lovely, wonderful co host, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. I have been leaning into the pause, into stillness, and really considering what it means to me. And I'm really excited to have this conversation. Yeah. How about you? How you doing today, sis?
I am doing well. I am also really trying to lean into this month's, topic, the stillness. And, naturally, for some reason, I've just been waking up extremely early. And although not wanting to get out of bed. So I have started to use that time where I'm naturally awake, before the sun comes up, to just sit in the stillness and in the quiet and um just allow myself some awake time, but that is restful, that is, quiet, that is still. So I've been leaning into it much more, which anyone who has been watching knows that me and stillness have not been the best of friends. So it's interesting as it comes up, like to notice exactly where in my body I feel it and how my mind wanders and goes off and all of the different things that kind of happen. And I'm really just excited to talk about it and see what comes up, because I always learn something in our conversations. I always feel that we have these conversations and we always say that we're not teachers per se, that we're um peer guides, that we're classmates, that we are really, this discussion is classmates having a conversation about the lessons. And I do think I come away with a better understanding every time we do this, you know.
Same.
Yeah. So let's just jump into it today. The first thing that we have on our little outline today is, what do we mean when we say stillness? Um and I'm using the general, like, global we. When I say we, not just what do me and uni mean, but
Right.
like, what does it mean? What does spirituality mean when they say, stillness? What does the Bible, when it says be still and know? What does that mean? So, Uni, I'm gonna kick it to you first. What are your thoughts? What do we mean by stillness?
Like I said, I've really been, you know, taking time with stillness and really trying to not reach for it, not, you know what I mean? Not try too hard at stillness because then I felt like, like, oh, you're defeating the purpose. Like you're trying too hard, you know? And when I started to think about stillness as like this state of rest, I thought about my own relationship with stillness and how it gave me more awareness, how it allowed me to see some of the things that I was carrying that was like really heavy and allowed me to kind of like put those things down or at least begin that process of putting those things down and how resting in stillness tried to it allowed me to really come home to myself and be closer to myself, and I started like saying my affirmation, my intention for the month. I'm creating space for stillness so that I can listen more deeply. As I am leaning into stillness, I get closer to my truth. And this light bulb went off in my head, right? This light bulb went off in my head. Look, it just went off again, like sting, because it just hit me, and I'm just like, stillness is our natural state. You know what I mean? Stillness is that oneness. Stillness is where we go to when we leave from here and where we were before we got here. Stillness is who we are always. You know what I mean? It's underneath like everything that this life has handed us. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like stillness is our natural state. And so to lean into stillness is to be closer to who we truly are. It's to be closer to God. Like when I read that and I meditated on be still and know, and heaven came to mind, like not necessarily like heaven or hell, like in that state, but just heaven came to
Mhm.
mind, like be still and know. And so I feel like when we tap into stillness and when we allow stillness um to just be, like I feel like I said before, like it's not something that you necessarily reach or move towards because now you're doing kind of like the opposite of it. So
Mhm.
it's like when you rest into that stillness, you give it an opportunity, or you give yourself an opportunity to be like who you truly are and really connected to the oneness of your true self, you
Mhm.
know? And I don't know, like it just, I mean, this revelation came to me like in one of my, meditations, and I'm still trying to articulate it. I feel like almost, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I just feel like it's that true presence of who we are. Like when we are no longer in this earthly vessel, we are in the presence of stillness.
Mhm.
We are in the presence of that oneness. And so when we allow that to come up, it's like we allow ourselves to really connect to that version of ourselves. Like I don't even know if I'm saying it right. It just feels so profound to me. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? And so yeah, I'm just gonna let that rest because I feel like I'm gonna say the same thing in different ways. But yeah, it's such an amazing um just concept or thing to like lean into. I'm so grateful that we're leaning into it during this
Mhm.
time. So what about you, Umi? I gotta throw the question back at you. What do you mean by stillness? What is your relationship been to stillness,
Yeah. Well, to me, it's kind of one. It's a definitely a place of rest, right? That we are in this earthly vessel. This meat suit,
if you will.
if you will, this meat suit. This that we and it. it has all of these things that it does, and it's miraculous the way that it works, but um your heart is always beating. Your body is always processing things. There's always movement. There's always vibration, right? Stillness is not even possible in the physical realm. It's not. uh,
Mm,
there's no such thing as absolute stillness. There's
right.
no such thing as absolute stillness. And so it's not a physical necessarily, like it's not a physical state of being. It's a state of being in your spirit. Now, yes, being calm and being quiet help you to access that, right? Though they're not necessities, because there's other ways to reach stillness through chanting, through movement. We see Tai Chi and Qigong and just different moving meditations. The Buddhists do walking meditation, and there's chanting. There's all these different ways to, and we're going to talk about a lot of this a little later, but there's all these ways to get to this place of stillness that is not still,
Hmm.
in the sense of it's not the lack of movement, right? It's also not the lack of noise necessarily. It's not necessarily the lack of, I won't say noise, but the lack of sound, right? It's not
Right.
necessarily the lack of sound. So it has to be a state of being. It's a state of being, and you're surrendering movement, you're surrendering speech, you're surrendering thought so that you can enter that state of being, which, like you said, really is our true state of being. It's connecting to that inner self that is the universe, that inner self that is God, that inner self that is spirit. And so that's how I interpret stillness, in a spiritual sense. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that was beautiful.
thank you. Um, and so as we move on, we kind of wanted to talk about stillness as rest for the mind. And like I was saying in the very beginning, like the world just is always going, 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 going. Like we've gotten to a place in society with technology, with just expectations for our physical labor, expectations for socially, for as whatever it is that you do, be it a parent, a sibling, a friend, a coworker, a boss, whatever. There are all of these expectations on how you are supposed to move, you know and the expectation is that you're always doing something. Every moment of every day has to have something happening, whether it's scheduled or not, although most of us live overscheduled lives. I remember that life. I don't have
Hmm.
a necessarily an overscheduled life now. It's still, but it's not overscheduled in the sense that I don't have everything, every moment of my day on my calendar have something next to it, but I'm still expected to do a lot of things in a lot of ways, and it's to such a point that we often have a really hard time saying no. you know it's rest feels like laziness or like a waste of time, right? And so this stillness is so, it's so necessary, particularly now in this time, in this age that we're in, where this stillness, you don't really have time to appreciate anything. you know that rest really allows you to appreciate everything. One, it allows you time to reflect. It allows you time to observe. It allows you time to just marinate in it. You know what I mean? Just be in the moment. How can you enjoy a day on the beach when you're worried about, you have this to do later, you have that, you can't be in that moment. And so I want to get your thoughts as like the importance of stillness when it comes to just rest for your mind, for your brain, for your thoughts, like, and your body, you know. It's your body also needs rest. So, what say you about stillness as rest?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, we are constantly prodded and encouraged to always be moving, always be doing something. And I feel like it's because we think we're going to miss something. We're going to miss out on some money, we're going to miss out on some information, we're going to miss out on some news or some update. It's why we're scrolling on our, internet, and we're on all these different social media sites, and we think we're going to miss something. We want to know as much as possible. We
Mhm.
want to, even when it comes to achieving, like, we want to achieve as much as possible. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to miss there's in the church, they say, oh, you don't want to miss your blessings and all these other things,
Mhm.
and it's like, at the end of the day, what I have noticed when it comes to resting, my awareness and the things that I am able to accomplish and do and take care of, from my own personal life, myself, my family, work, whatever it is that I'm doing, when I allow myself to rest, I actually do more. I
Yeah.
actually I
Yeah.
actually accomplish more, I achieve more, I'm more aware, less things are flying over my head. One of my supervisors one time was like, "Yeah, I love to multitask. I can multitask." And I had to think to myself, like, just the day prior, I was saying to myself, I hate multitasking now, Whereas when I was younger, I was kind of the same way. Like, yeah, I can do this. I can answer the phone, answer an email, answer this person in front of me. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
And fix my bra strap at the same time. Like, I can do it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like, at the end of the day, I feel like the quality of what I was doing wasn't really hitting the mark, even from my own standards, because I was being pulled in so many directions. I feel like when you focus on one thing, your mind is able to, like, rest, because you don't have so many different things pulling at you. You don't have so many different things gnawing at you to, for your attention. The more you are able to focus your attention, the more you are able to, again, see, do, hear, be, all of that. So I think that it is so important for people to really keep that in mind, that you are not missing out on anything when you are giving yourself an opportunity to rest. If anything, you're gonna, I'm telling you, the insights, the awareness, the things that you know what I mean, that you may have missed, you're gonna be like, oh, I didn't even realize that, because you gave yourself an opportunity to rest and catch up to the moment, you know. And then when
Mhm.
you're resting in the moment, you can see so much more. You can take in so much more. They do, like, studies on, people who, like, you put a picture in front of them and they can only, like, how, like, the memory recall and things like that. I feel like our memory recall is really terrible because we are trying to take in way too much. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
When you're able
Right.
to focus, there's just, I'm telling you, it's phenomenal how much you're able to do when you give yourself an opportunity to rest. And sometimes that comes in the form of just doing one thing at a time.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Just being able to do one thing at a time sometimes it honestly, it makes that thing more enjoyable.
yeah,
You don't feel so
yeah,
stressed about it, you know? And staying in that moment with that thing, no matter what it is, does make it easier to do, even if it's a hard thing, you know? It's easier to do it because you're focused on that specific thing, you know? And so, yeah, I do think we all need to lean into stillness more, even if it's just for the rest, just for the pause, just, you know. Um, so next, I want to kind of talk about stillness as a spiritual practice. And I was kind of thinking maybe we could save this until a little later. Um, but I think it's important to bring it up now because I think that using it as a spiritual practice, as stillness as a spiritual practice, it gives us permission to prioritize it. You know, it really does give us permission to prioritize that rest. And it's important as a spiritual practice, and we talk about this all the time, for listening, for receiving messages, for tapping into your full potential, for your vision, for clearing emotions, for sitting with your emotions. We had a long conversation about that on Monday, about how stillness lets you feel your humanness, your human emotions, and the necessity of feeling those emotions to clear them, and sometimes not to clear them but just to feel them. you know, um, to experience them in their fullness, which is really what they want. And so stillness as a spiritual practice, and we're going to go into different ways that you can practice, and we're going to definitely go much deeper into this. This is more like a just a quick, note about stillness being a spiritual practice. I think, yeah, we all know stillness is, everybody says meditate, 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 gets old, be mindful, be mind, and we hear it so much that we kind of like, eh, at least I have. I'm going to be really honest. That has definitely been my relationship to it. Although I know how important it is, although I know how good it feels, although I welcome the rest. Um, but I think what it's allowed me to do specifically is, when I think of stillness as a spiritual practice, one, it allows me to integrate it into my life in a way, where it's like praying before a meal, or prayer in general. They say live life like a prayer, where, okay, you pray when you do this, you pray when you just integrate prayer into your life, integrating stillness into your life. And I say all the time that I don't have a very, very good relationship with stillness, that I have a hard time sitting. And to a big extent, I do. But I often don't give myself enough credit. And I realized this recently, is I actually have an alarm that goes off on my phone every hour, and it's a gong. And when I hear the gong, not only me, but everybody in my house does this. We take 2 seconds and just go. And then we just keep talking. Like, we just go back. Like, it's just a reminder to just take a breath. And literally everybody in my house, when they hear this go off, because I will just stop mid sentence and just take a breath, take a moment to stop, right? So it has allowed me to integrate it into my life. Would I like to deepen that practice? Yeah. Like more than 2 seconds every hour.
Right.
You got anything to say about stillness as a spiritual practice before we, get into the really deep of how to practice and all those things?
Yeah, I think just a reiteration that it helps you to really see what's really there, and that's what spirituality kind of really helps us do. We are, in my opinion, we're so humanistic, that we forget that we are spiritual beings first.
Hmm.
We're spiritual beings first, and we're having this human experience. And it's important for us to weave the two together as we are, living this human life in this meat suit. We should be weaving them together. And so I think, like you said, it helps us remember to prioritize and to integrate it into our lives, because that's what we're here to do. We're not here to forget our spirituality. We're not here to forget our oneness. We're not here to forget any of that. So, yeah, that's all I have to add.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So that brings us to our next question. And I'm putting this to everyone in the comments who's, we're in there chatting with you as we have been for the past few weeks. And I've really been enjoying that. I've really been enjoying like being in the chat and, talking to people and asking questions and all of that. So our question right now is it hard for you to be still? Do you have trouble with stillness? We all know my answer. So Uni, I'm going to give it to you before I talk.
You know, I am on the path of recovery, to, you know, I used to have trouble being still as well, always had to have my phone or always had to do something, or internally, I'm always thinking something, always feeling something, always ruminating on something, being upset or, just one of those things. And so, again, I've said it a million times during quarantine, I really learned the value of stillness by force almost, you know what I mean? Like I didn't have an option. Um, and from that point, I started to like really lean in and like really kind of not force myself, but I was more aware of, like my own relationship with stillness and how I can really tap in more, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I don't think it's that hard for me to be still, but I'm not like there. Like if I had to give oh, I'm putting myself on the thing here. If I had to give it a 1 to 10, or just say 1 to 5. I think I'm on a 3. I think I'm at a 3. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to stillness, like I'm like on the road, like I'm almost there. I feel like not almost there. I still have a nice amount of work to do if I'm a 3, but um I feel like I've done a lot of work. And I do take those moments like to practice stillness if I'm, um, at work, at my, on my laptop, or, you know, um, when I wash my hands, when I use the restroom, I take a moment to be still. I drink tea a lot, so kind of like that pause before I take my first sip. Like there's definitely um, some instinctive ways that I feel like I have learned to embrace stillness in my life, but I still grab my phone and scroll, and I still have things to work through. So yeah, that's kind of where I am.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that honesty. You said you changed the scale from 1 to 10 to 1 to 5 and said 3, and I was like, well, I think I'm a 3 on that 1 to 10 scale.
No way. No way. No
Maybe a
way.
4. Maybe a 4. I don't feel like I'm above 5. I'm sorry, I just don't. I struggle with stillness. I really do. Physical stillness in that I'm always like I've got like a nervous thing that goes on with me when I try to sit still. I rock. I do this thing with my leg. Like yeah, I have a lot of that. Um I can be quiet. I can do that. Quiet I can do. Um I can definitely do quiet, but the stillness of the body is a little more difficult for me. In that, like, big movement, yes, I can rest, but I'm always going to have some, movement. Again, it's not about the physical stillness when you're trying to practice stillness in a spiritual sense. However, I do feel like that is kind of a chemicalization of what's going on in my mind, right? Because
Mhm.
the quieter it is, the louder my thoughts get. And I've found myself literally like fighting myself in my head. Oh, you're thinking again. Stop that. Okay. No more thoughts. Count your breaths. And my mind is already gone. Even with mantras. Like mantras have helped me a lot, and I do TM, transcendental meditation, and I have my mantra, my TM mantra. Um And I can consistently say that mantra in my head and have a full-blown conversation with myself. I don't know how I do it.
Telling you that multitasking.
I'm
Oh,
multitasking. It really is. It's like built in. I have sat in meditation and said, okay, this session I'm doing transcendental meditation. And you get a little app with transcendental meditation, and it's like got like a timer on it or whatever to do your meditation. So I'll turn that meditation app on and I'll set my time. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do my 20 minutes of TM. And I'll sit there and I'm doing the I'm doing the mantra, and the next thing I know, I'm still saying the mantra. I still hear the mantra in my head, but I'm thinking about what I need to do, or that conversation that I had, or where's this money going to come from? You know what I mean? Oh yes, I need to go shopping. And I'll catch myself and I'm like, but the mantra is still playing. Like I still hear myself saying it. And
wow.
so I do, I'm still, struggling with allowing my brain to settle. And that's where I say I really feel like I need to go deeper in meditation. I've really been looking into, we spoke about this, of a Vipassana meditation retreat so that I can learn a better practice and kind of be in an environment where it's conducive to that, so that when I leave I can take that practice with me. um and I really do struggle with stillness, and yet I still find it to be absolutely necessary, like absolutely necessary. And I can find that stillness in other ways, and still I feel the need to be able to sit still and quiet, with my mind being quiet. And so yes, I do struggle with it. It's just where where I am. You know what I mean? Like I don't I'm not judging that necessarily. I'm not judging myself for it. I think I used to. And honestly, I think a lot of our work on this channel has made me realize that there's no need for me to judge myself for it. So I'm not judging myself on the fact that I have hard time sitting still. And it's interesting to me that I actually have a hard time with quiet because I get overstimulated so easy.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting though? It's like I get
Mm-hmm.
overstimulated really easy. If there are more than two sounds going outside, like if the TV is going and someone is trying to talk to me, I can't focus on either one of them. I
Well,
can't.
that's because you have so much going on inside, and then that's added on top of it. You know what I mean? So yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure all of you out there, can relate in some shape or form. Um, let us know. Like, and I'm here to say, like, don't judge yourself for it. I definitely used to judge myself for it, and also feel judged by a lot of spiritual teachers and communities that kind of get on people about being still, being still, being still. You got to be still. You got to be still. Yeah, and I think that's caused me to also discredit myself a lot, when I just, like as I just said, like I literally every hour take a few seconds of stillness. I do, meditate in community with my spiritual center at least on a weekly basis. Like I do take moments of stillness. Now I've been getting up early and having my stillness in the morning, which is a practice I've wanted to cultivate, and I'm grateful that it has kind of naturally evolved. I didn't force myself into it. It's just happening, just randomly, based on that intention. I do I have my sheet? I don't have it with me.
Oh
But my
no.
practice sheet, my intention to sit
Mhm.
my butt down, like it just kind of naturally evolved, and I'm grateful for that. So yeah, if stillness is hard for you, still keep trying. Just keep trying. Find the method of stillness that works for you. Find the time that works for you, the place that works for you, and lean into it, whatever that may be. You know. So next we're going to talk about some common misconceptions about stillness. Okay. And the first one that I have here is the difference between stillness and silence. And we talked a bit about this in our pre-meet and a little bit about this last week. Um and it really, there's so many different levels to this, so many different ways you can look at this, right? Obviously stillness is the lack of movement and silence is the lack of sound. And I feel that this is neither of those and both. That's how I feel. It's not necessarily lack of movement and lack of sound, but it's also lack of movement and lack of sound, you know? It's also, I don't want to say lack of thought, but like the stillness of thought, the quietness of thought. It's observation. It's because to think and to observe are not necessarily the same thing at all. And really, this stillness is about observing, watching, looking, seeing, being, you know. It's just that lack of movement and lack of sound help that process. So Uni, what do you think? What is the difference? Is there a difference? Is it all of the above? Is it neither?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's both and it's neither. It's I feel like it's like what's coming to me is it's the presence behind all of that. Like you said,
Mm,
the observer. So it's like when you get deeper, again, there's this presence that we have. We all have a spiritual presence that we come in, a spiritual blueprint, fingerprint, thumbprint, whatever you want to call it. We have that. That's our signature. And I really feel like that's what the stillness is. You know, it's behind all the thoughts, behind all the feelings, behind all the noise. But at the same time, it can be there, the presence can be there in the midst of the noise, in the midst of the of all of the nonsense or whatever. You
right.
know, it's about knowing how to tap into that presence. You know, like I feel like I am, even though, we've been doing our work this month, I almost feel like it's indescribable. You know, like I almost feel like I don't have the words. You know, I feel
Mhm.
like it's the like that's how I
Mhm.
feel.
Mhm.
That's what's really coming up for me. Like it's like there's, I don't know, it's almost like I don't have the words for it, because you can have that in the midst of anything. You know,
Right.
people have overcome some very chaotic situations, and I feel like a lot of times it's because you are able to tap into that, that stillness, that presence within yourself, and that awareness in order to hear more deeply, get closer to your truth, understand how you can get out of, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
The chaos without even trying.
Right. Right.
It's like the stillness, the presence, the awareness is going to, like, it's going to give you what you need. you know? That's how I
Yeah.
feel, yeah.
Yeah. Um one of the notes that we have is that you can be physically still and mentally noisy, which is what I was describing about how I
Hmm.
and what you were just saying is the inverse of that, is that you can be physically moving but deeply still.
Yeah.
Amongst all the noise, you can still tap into that place of stillness. You can still tap into that place of peace and being and awareness. And so it's not stillness, it's not silence, but it is stillness and it is silence. It's both and not either or, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think another thing to note is that stillness is not doing nothing. It's not the same thing as just doing nothing. Okay, you can have a day where you do nothing. It doesn't mean that you were still. It doesn't mean that you tapped into the stillness, the capital T, capital S stillness. Right? It's not the same thing as just not doing anything, though that has its own, benefits that, doing nothing, a day where you do nothing is, restful for the body, can be restful for the mind as well. Um, but it's not doing nothing. And I think a lot of us equate it with doing nothing, which is why in this world of busyness, we have a hard time sitting down. We have a hard time being still so that we can tap into that place, you know? And I really do feel like the lack of movement, lack of noise version of stillness is is like the training wheels version of stillness, you know? It's the training wheels version because when you haven't tapped in enough, you're not readily able to just grab it. You know what I mean? You're not readily able to go and drop in to that place. And so eventually, yeah, you can be physically moving and deeply, deeply still, deeply, deeply mindful. And so I think it's just it's not the same thing as just doing nothing, right? But it is also it can be doing nothing. I don't want to pigeonhole it into this thing that it's not, necessarily. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like we go down such a rabbit hole if we keep digging in this direction. Um, and here's we were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier. We touched on it. The question is stillness or is not is stillness, is listening or trying to hear actually stillness? And I'm going to give that one to you right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we definitely touched on it a little bit earlier. We talked about like that reach, when you're like you listen, you're trying to hear you go, you know what I mean? Like you're like you're trying to reach out and touch the stillness. And the stillness of like no, 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 sweetheart. No, 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 no. I come to you. I find you. I make my presence known within you. You don't have to
Mhm.
reach out and touch me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like when we're listening for something, we have already kind of like drawn what we want to hear. We have these expectations, we have these thoughts and opinions and feelings and all of that stuff. And that's when things get muddy. You know what I mean? That's why a lot of times people who are, great readers and channelers and things like that, they say they can't read for themselves because they know there's that filter, there's that blockage. There's something they want to hear.
Right.
They want a certain message. And even they, as, high priestesses and, with all the spiritual gifts and everything, have the awareness to know that I could muddy the waters here. I could fudge this up a little bit. So
Mhm.
let me get someone who has some clarity, who'll be willing to receive, who is open, who is not have any preconceived thoughts and notions about what they want to hear. So I could get it straight. No
Mhm.
chaser. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that yeah, when you're listening for something, and I've done it a million times myself, because I look around and I'm just like, yeah, I thought that was gonna go a different, like I really thought I was tapped in. But I was
Right.
hearing what I wanted to hear.
Mhm.
I wasn't really hearing from the place of stillness. And so now, I really practice that as well, just allowing that, like even reciting that Bible verse, be still and know, you know what I mean? Like I just have to be still. I have to quiet everything. I have to give myself an opportunity to really, again, my affirmation, be closer to the truth. Not what I want it to be, but the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This one, I definitely hits home for me because being a very critical person, that's a Virgo, my Virgo rising, very self-critical, extremely self-critical. I would tell myself that I had to listen, and you have to listen. You got to be quiet because you have to listen. And yeah, we do have to be still so that we can hear. But it's not just because you're like, what? Like you're not, it's not that. And it's not you're constantly telling yourself to shh, stop thinking, stop thinking. You're not going to hear anything. Stop thinking, that because you're still not still. You're not being still. It makes me think of, I homeschool my son and he'll be making noise and, I'm like, I need you to calm down so that you can hear, you know, and he'll go, oh, sorry. And then he's like, and I'm like, you're not being still. You got to stop. You can't hear like that, you know? But that's a physical world, way of looking at it. And you're trying to like physically get a place that is spiritual. And that is not, it's just, that's not how you do it. Yeah, be quiet. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yes. And beating yourself up and forcing yourself to try to hear, you're still not being still. It's like, and like you said, when it comes to intuitives and readers and things like that, they often can't do it for themselves because there's too much noise, too much personal noise. But I feel like absolutely trying to listen is the noise itself. It's the noise itself, telling yourself to constantly be quiet. That's another thing my son does. He'll just shh, shh, shh. And I'm like, I still can't hear because you're telling everybody to shh. I can't hear over your shushing. you know. I don't know. Anybody who has been around little kids has had them shush louder than whatever you were trying to get them to be quiet. It's it's both cute and annoying. So, and let's see how much time we have. We are at 48 minutes. We still have quite a few things on this list. Um, and I don't know if I want to dive into stillness and spiritual bypass this week. I kind of want to save that for next week because that's a huge conversation. So, what do you think about us just like sidebarring that until next week? I think that that's going to be a really big conversation. Um,
Okay.
yeah. I don't want to get into it when we really only have like 10, 12 minutes, 10, 11 minutes left. I think we can sidebar that till next week because that's a huge conversation. That is definitely a big one. Um, and so I do want us to talk a little bit about stillness as observation and awareness. And particularly with regard to emotions. Um, I I think that we often think that we have to do big processes with emotions. And yeah, sometimes those things help. Don't get me wrong. There are times that we need to do these big processes to move it, to get it flowing. Um, but this idea of just being aware of it, and I'm thinking specifically of grief and sadness and even anger, to be present with that, to take it into the stillness. This idea of taking things into the stillness and sitting with them and just being with them. Um, and I'm gonna be real honest, it's a new concept for me. It's something I've heard a lot, but just recently, as in like this weekend, because obviously every time we plan an episode, everything in life starts to line up with whatever it is we're talking about that month. But the practitioner who spoke at our service this past weekend was talking about just sitting with the emotions and feeling your humanness. And I realized that I don't know how to do that. I don't think I know how to do that. How to just be with an emotion, how to just, there is anger. I see it. It is there. And just be with it, not try to justify it, not try to wish it away, not try to move it, not try to touch it, but to just sit in it and sit with it and experience it and allow it to just dissolve. And yeah, I don't know that I personally know how to do that. And I'm looking forward to further, exploring this. Maybe by next week I'll have experienced that. Maybe by next week I'll be able to talk on it a little more. I don't know. Um, but this idea of just observing and acknowledging and being aware and feeling in this place of stillness, in this place of being anchored into your divine knowing, right? Because that's really what we're looking for when we're getting into stillness, is like anchoring into that divine place. I personally just don't know what that feels like, looks like, or how to do that. So I feel like it would really help in processing a lot of emotions, because oftentimes we don't know what to do with them. And people give us this practice and this thing, and burn this and write this and journal that and take this herb. And yes, all of those things. And sometimes it's not what you need. It's not enough. And I feel like a lot of times this over practicing of these different things is a spiritual bypass of its own, you know. Um and so I think I'm gonna toss this over to you, and like, what are your feelings about just sitting with an emotion, taking an emotion, and an emotion that's negative. Yeah, I guess you could take positive emotions into stillness too, but we think about it more when we come to these negative emotions. But taking it into the stillness and being aware of it, observing it, acknowledging it, but not trying to edit or justify or anything like that. What are your thoughts?
I feel like I've been doing this more and more. Um, Yesterday I was leaving work and I was driving out the parking lot, and um, this man went to like pick up the woman that he was with. Like, you know how like a man carries a woman over a threshold? So he went to like pick her up, and she was laughing, he was laughing. It was just like a beautiful moment, but I bust out crying. Like, I started crying because something in me was just like, wow, like I've never had that experience. Like I felt the love, I saw the love, I saw, you know what I mean? And I just in that moment allowed myself to observe the fact that I feel, or um I feel like that's never happened for me, but it's something that I've always wanted. You know what I mean? Like just to be like really in love. Like I don't know those people from a can of paint. Don't get me wrong.
Right. Right.
But just something like just that joy, or it could be that that I don't have that right now, you know what I mean? But there was a feeling that came over me of like, first I was like, oh, and then I bust out crying, you know
Yeah.
and I'm driving and crying, out the parking lot, like, geez, and I did not try to, coddle myself and say anything like, oh, your time is coming, or, oh, because this happened and your life was, I didn't blame my parents, like, oh, if only they loved me, I didn't do that. If only I was loved properly, I would have, if only I had a
Mhm.
good example of what a marriage looked like. I'd be married with 5 kids, by now, and I'd be
Right.
happy, and I'd have my garden. Those are thoughts that shouldn't really go through my mind sometimes when I see it. And it's not out of jealousy. It's just out of an awareness that my heart really wants that. My heart wants to be in a happy, healthy connection, and I haven't really had that in my life. And so yeah, I feel like it's something that I have been. I was gonna say, was it just me?
No.
I feel like I have been giving myself, just opportunities to be aware of, different feelings and different, emotions, and observe them, and a lot of times when I do, I am, you know, like there's some sort of a release, something happens, I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel comforted. My inner child feels um
Mm.
just seen, really. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think that, there's a lot of things that, like I said, could have came up. I could have I was just crying because it was just a beautiful moment. You know what I mean? But I was also aware of all of the things that came up, and I allowed them to just be what they were. You know what I mean? I didn't try to push it away. I didn't even wipe my tears, really, to be honest. I just let them fall while I was driving for a little bit,
Mm. Mm.
and I just let it be. And I feel like I said, of course, we're doing this work this month, and so things are coming up, and I feel like it is, just giving me more opportunities to, just be aware and observe, and again, not point any fingers, not even like I didn't I can't even say I felt sorry for myself. You know what I mean? It was just like a wow, like I would love that, and so on and so forth. It
Mhm.
was just so
Mhm.
many different emotions, honestly, that came up that I just allowed it to be what it was. And I just really think that a lot of times that that's really like the first step before anything. It's like just allowing, you know what I
Mm.
mean? Like
Mhm.
even before you can observe, you got to allow it, to
Yes.
be. And so, yeah.
Thank you for that
Mhm.
beautiful example. I
Thank you.
appreciate you sharing. I really do.
This
So I
happened
think
yesterday. It was
it
fresh
just
on my brain.
right. You all don't understand how like we plan these episodes and then it's like all these little things pop up, sometimes big things pop up and
Yeah.
it really does come up. It really is our unique curriculum, and even though we're studying the same things, it'll happen different for you than it happens for me. Sometimes it's similar and sometimes it's just so different and so interesting. um so thank you all, our classmates. We're so grateful to have you here. Share with us your thoughts. What do you think about stillness? Is it hard for you? you know how do you practice your stillness? We're going to go deeper next week. We're going to talk about spiritual bypass. We may talk a little bit more about sitting with emotions. You know, there's still, I feel like there's still a lot to kind of explore there. We'll talk about different practices. But, you know, we really appreciate you all. This has been a really great conversation. Um, Yet again, another great conversation. Uni, anything you want to say as we sign off?
I just want to encourage you all to take, little moments for stillness for yourself. You are really going to give yourself something really special. If you have to set a reminder on your phone, or if you set that intention, like I said, you can do it when you, wash your hands. You can do it, before you take a sip of water. You can do, at any given point, just set an intention for yourself for allowing the presence of stillness to um, come up for you.
Mhm.
I would really love next week for you all to share in the comments some of your experiences with stillness. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. We bless every last one of you, and we're so grateful for you. Until next time, peace.
Peace.